If there is any problem, just send that chat message. I think you can see my screen.
Muted.
Okay, so in today's class, we are going to discuss how to make use of custom controller and how to make use of service call. So these two topics we'll discuss in one example. How to use custom controller and how to make use of service call. So custom controller is used as an alternative for component controller. So I can say custom controller is totally an alternative for component controller. So whatever the functionality you can do with component controller, the same functionalities you can implement through custom controller. Whatever functionalities you do with component controller, the same things you can do with custom controller. So in today's class, we are discussing about custom controller, and it is an alternative for component controller. I mean to say, custom controller is also a global controller. Custom controller is also a global controller here. But in real-time applications, you have to use custom controller whenever there is more number of nodes and attributes. If we have more number of views and more number of nodes and attributes, in that situation, we create a custom controller. So this is the main point you need to understand. Whenever application has more views, and more number of nodes and attributes, in that situation, we try to create a custom controller. But it is not mandatory. It is optional. But in general, in real-time scenarios, this is the approach we follow. If, say, for example, your application has 10 or 15 views, then it is better to balance the load by using custom controller. So custom controller will internally balance the load on component controller if the application has more number of nodes and if the application has more number of views. So these are the two important lines you need to remember when you are using custom controller. Now at the same time, let us go with service call. So service call is also one of the options. So this service call option is to invoke BAPIs. If you want to use BAPIs in Webdynpro, or if you want to use RFCs in Webdynpro, or if you want to use function modules in Webdynpro, then we can use service call. This is one of the options. Inside Webdynpro, you can use BAPIs, RFCs, function modules by using this service call option. It's a shortcut technique to utilize these options, BAPIs, RFCs, and function modules. This is one of the technique. So in today's class, I'll try to use one BAPI. You can use any BAPI, it doesn't matter at all. So in this example, I want to use, say, for example, BAPI flight get list. And I'll try to develop this application by using custom controller. I want to develop an application by using BAPI flight get list and custom controller. So let us understand, before designing application, you need to understand what are the parameters of BAPI. So let me go to SC37. Here you can see BAPI flight get list. And in this BAPI, you can see there are some input parameters. Airline is one of the input parameter. Destination from, destination to, max rows. All these are input parameters. And output is displayed in under flight list here. There is the tables parameter. According to documentation, you can see list of flights will be displayed by using flight list. So already it's available, and if it is a custom BAPI, you have to write the code. If it is a standard BAPI, the code will exist, so you can directly implement these things in Webdynpro. But before using BAPI in Webdynpro, you need to know what is input for the BAPI, what is output of the BAPI. So according to BAPI, according to this BAPI, so airline is one of the parameter. And you can see flight list, airline is one input, max rows is also another input. And flight list is the output. So what my requirement is, using airline max rows, I want to create a form, input form. Input form I can create in Webdynpro by using airline and max rows. But I want to create table. I want to create table by using flight list. So that is my requirement. So first of all, you try to understand the behavior of this BAPI. In SC37, if you execute BAPI, you can see airline is input. If I provide LH on execute, it is getting 83 entries here. Flight list contains 83 entries here. And if I provide AA American Airlines as input, it is getting 30 entries in flight list. Flight list contains 30 entries here. And you can see, if I don't provide any input, it is trying to get all the entries here, 397 entries. It is trying to display all the entries. Just a minute. Okay, so this is the BAPI behavior. Airline is input and flight list is output. And if required, you can also use max rows also as input. But in Webdynpro side, I want to design like this, input form with airline and max rows. For output table, I want to use flight list. So it's very simple. Let us go to Webdynpro now and let us create one separate component. Say for example, I'm creating component. I'm creating component, and component contains window, and window contains a view. I'm saving it in a package. So you can see window and a view, and by default component control is created. This is a default controller. But in this example, I don't want to use component controller. I want to use custom controller in this example. So you can directly right click and you can create a custom controller here. You can see that. So you can provide some name, Z, something like my custom controller. Very simple. And when you save it, left hand side, you'll get custom controller. You can see this. And as I said earlier, custom controller also contains a context. And custom controller can also have methods. Remember that? Now, after creating custom controller, I want to use service call because I want to use BAPI. So let us go to this component. You can right click, create a service call. You can right click and you can create service call. So this is for using BAPI. So what I mean to say is, whenever we use service call, automatically nodes and attributes are auto-generated. Remember that point? Nodes and attributes are auto-generated, and automatically one execute method is also auto-generated. So don't forget these 2 points. Service call. When we use service call, automatically nodes and attributes are generated and execute method is also auto-generated. So these are the points you need to remember. So let me use that here. Let me right click component. Let us create service call here. So you'll get this screen, just click on continue. Now, in this example, I want to use custom controller for this requirement. So you have to choose your controller here. So there are 2 global controllers. One is component control is global, custom control is also global. But in this example, I want to choose custom controller. So select that custom controller. And custom control is already available, so choose existing. We have already created this controller, so select existing. The same example you can also do with component controller by selecting this component controller. But in today's example, I want to use custom controller, so let me select this. And just click on continue. And BAPI is also a function module, so you can use this option, function module option. And what is your BAPI name? So that BAPI name you have to provide. BAPI flight, say for example, get list. BAPI flight get list. And this is important situation. Here you can see. So I want to use in my Webdynpro, I want to use airline, max rows, and flight list. These things I want to use it in Webdynpro. So that's the reason why I'm trying to select. That's the reason why I'm trying to select airline, max rows. You can see all these are listed here, flight list. So whichever things you want to use, you have to select them as context. I want to use airline in Webdynpro, so select it as context. I want to use max rows in Webdynpro, so select it as context. I want to use flight list for output in Webdynpro, so select it as context. Very simple. Whichever things you want to use in Webdynpro, select them as context. Airline, max rows, flight list. So these three things will be auto-generated in your global controller. So you can see in your global custom controller, one execute method is also auto-generated. In custom controller, your execute method is also auto-generated. You need not write the code. Just click on continue, then complete. So you can see these things. Everything is auto-generated because all these things are internally coming from BAPI. Airline, max rows, and flight list. All these are coming from BAPI. So now, where these things are created? These things are created in custom controller. And you can see execute method is also auto-generated here in custom controller, along with nodes and attributes. So that is the advantage when you use service call. Automatically nodes, attributes, and execute method is also generated. So this is the situation. Now I want to use all these nodes and attributes for screen designing. So let me go to view. I'm going to view. So there is a view context. Now right side component controller is available. Left side view controller is available. But by default, custom controller is not visible. So if you want to use custom controller, just select controller usage. There is a separate button here. Controller usage. And you can choose your custom controller. Because my nodes, attributes, method, everything is available here. So select custom controller. So you can see right side, bottom, there is a custom controller with all the things. But on top, there is a component controller. At the bottom, there is a custom controller. You can use whichever you want in your applications. Now, from custom controller, you can drag drop this and so let us create go to layout, and for form, let us insert one group. And let me make it matrix with SAP color. Now, inside this group, I want to create one input form by maintaining relation with airline and max rows. So it's very simple. Go to wizard, select form, and you can choose context by binding with importing node. Importing is nothing but it's like input node, which contains both these input parameters. So I'm selecting importing node. Because of that, two input fields will be automatically created. According to airline max rows, two input fields will be created and binding is maintained. So I'll get the form. Now let me create one button. For triggering method, I'm creating one button. Say for example, search data. You can create one action. Search data. You can see that. So we'll write the code later, but first of all, I'll try to use table. Table is for output purpose, for displaying flight list records. So go to wizard again, select a table, and maintain context binding with flight list. because flight list is expected to display output records according to BAPI. So I'm choosing flight list here. So whichever fields you want to display in output, you can select bindings, then continue. So you'll get output table. Okay, so now there is one more part remaining. There's a button, right? So for this button, we have to implement some code. So earlier, we used to write this type of coding, WDCYMP controller, and we used to call something like execute MD, something like this. But in today's example, it is not applicable because our method is not in component controller. So you should not follow this technique. Our method is in custom controller now. Remember that point. So to do this, you should not use WDCYMP controller. You should not use this one. It will not work. So what you can do is you have to follow certain steps. Whenever you want to call any method of custom controller, you can follow these wizard options. You can choose wizard. Here you can see. And go to general option. You can go to general. In general, there is a second option, method call in controller, in used controller. There is a second option. But in today's class, I want to call execute method of custom controller, so choose custom controller here. You can choose custom controller. It is updated here. And which method you want to trigger, that you can choose here. Execute BAPI flight get list. So execute method of custom controller, we are triggering through code wizard. It will write the code automatically. You can see that. Execute method of custom controller is triggered here. So I'll do it again. Go to wizard, select general, method call in used controller, and you can choose custom controller here, and you can choose that appropriate method, execute BAPI. That's it. Execute BAPI, then just click on continue. So few lines of code is auto-generated. So let us test this application now. Just activating. So here you can see this is your screen, airline and max rows and search button with output table. So you can also get search help here. Search help is automatically available because in the data dictionary, airline field contains search help. So I'm selecting American Airlines, and when I click on search data, it will display the data. And if I change the selection, say for example Air Canada, on search, there are no records with that criteria. And let me provide LH, Lufthansa, LH, Lufthansa, and when you click on search, you'll get those records. Very simple. Max rows is not mandatory. So if you don't provide any input, it will get all the records. You can see there are 397 entries. If you don't provide input, it will get all the records. That is how in BAPI the code is written. Now, in your assignment, I'll give one BAPI, so it's better you try this. You can use BAPI underscore sales order underscore get list. Okay, so input should be something like customer number and sales organization. And output table, you can use sales orders. It will display all sales orders. First you execute BAPI once and let us just understand the functionality. Then you design the screen in Webdynpro. So this is one assignment you can try. And I'll give one more assignment. Assignment 2, you can also try this BAPI sales order get status. You can also try this. So you try these things by using custom controller and service call options. Okay. And you try this option, second assignment, you try with component controller. Both are same. It won't be any change in your design. Just for your information, I'm just giving this assignment. Component controller with service call, you try one example. Another example, you try with custom controller and service call. So if you create your custom BAPI, you can also use custom BAPI with the same approach. You write your entire functionality in BAPI, and that BAPI you use it in Webdynpro for screen design. Okay, today I'll stop session early because I need to leave. Okay, if you have any doubts, I'll take from your side.
Unmuted.
Hello students, so you can ask one by one your doubts.
Hi, Mr. Ravi here.
Okay.
You have said that in input button airline,
Okay.
we have chosen airline and accordingly we push the button and we get the data in the table.
Yes.
But if we want to restrict if we want to some validation on that airline field, input field.
Okay. Okay.
Like how we do that?
Then we have to write the code in search action. Let me show that. You can write the validation at BAPI level, or you can also write the validation in Webdynpro also. Both are possible. You can write direct validation in BAPI level, or directly you can handle it in Webdynpro. So let me do that for you. So before executing BAPI, you can put simple validation here. First you capture the input airline. You have to capture your input airline from node, from importing node. So this you can do it by wizard itself. You can go to wizard, select your importing. Select your importing and you can see read operation. There's a read operation. So you'll get all the input values. Input values will come to ls underscore importing because we are internally calling get static attributes here. ls underscore importing is work area. So you can put some condition here. If ls underscore importing hyphen that field name. What is that field name? Airline is not initial. You can put any validation here. If it's not initial, then only I want to execute our custom controller method. So put ndif. Don't disturb this code. So is it clear now? Did you understand the requirement?
Yeah.
Is it clear now? Your doubt?
Yeah.
You can capture the data at any point of time and you can put validation, then execute the BAPI.
Okay.
Okay, what about others? Sandeep or Santosh, can you speak out?
No, it's clear, sir.
Everything clear? Everything clear?
Yeah.
I am surprised because you are having any doubt today.
Me?
No, Vijay, actually, the validation is BAPI level or Webdynpro level?
I have done just now. Okay. Is my screen visible to you?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, then I have done validation at Webdynpro level. Tami,
Can you show me the BAPI level validation?
BAPI level, you have to go to SAP-37 and you have to enhance.
So we need to find out enhance point or
Yes. That's a normal ABAP technique for BAPI level validation.
yeah, I understand. And can you please send me today's session and as well yesterday?
Okay, yesterday's and today's I'll send it at once.
Sir, one small doubt.
Okay.
We are using this service call option to call the function modules in BAPIs. Is it
Yes.
possible to just call a function module directly like that of ABAP editor within this method?
Yes, that is also possible.
Then what would be the
That
difference?
point also.
Okay.
So the point is, this is one of the alternative option.
Okay.
Muted.
So what happens is when you are using service call, the advantage is your nodes and attributes are auto-generated. That's the only advantage. Nothing more than that. But there is an alternative technique where you can directly call function module BAPI without using service call also. That means you need to follow normal ABAP technique. Call function, that BAPI name. You have to use call function and BAPI name if you want to call a BAPI without service call.
Unmuted.
Is it clear, Sandeep?
Yeah, it's clear, sir.
Sunil, are you practicing daily? Did you practice yesterday's example?
Yes, sir. Did not get the video.
Okay.
Yesterday.
Okay, I'll send it.
Did not get the video.
Sir, Santosh here.
Yeah, Santosh.
Sir, how do this airline is there and max rolls is there? How to do this obligatory for this as you told that?
That's what I'm
Can
saying.
you do an obligatory?
You handle validation.
Muted.
You handle validation in search action. I've already done. Apart from that, here you can see there is airline, and airline contains one input field with state as required. Here you can see. Airline state as required, so you'll get asterisk symbol. And you can also make max rows mandatory by using state property as required. So now you can see that. Apart from that, you can handle validations in search action. So let me run this once. When I discuss messages, you'll get more clarity about validations and messages. Here you can see now, your field is having red asterisk. Red asterisk means it is indicating mandatory. And if you don't provide input, you can see it is not getting the data also, because I have handled validation at search action. But how to print the message, I'll cover mostly in the next class. Success message, warning message, error messages, I'll cover in the next class.
Unmuted.
Santosh, is it clear?
Unmuted.
Yeah, sir, it is fine. Yes, sir, yes.
Fine.
Yes, sir. Yes.
What about Vijita? Is it clear? This concept? Vijita, is it clear? Okay, students. Today I'll leave your session early. So tomorrow we'll meet again with some more concepts. And make sure that you are practicing all these things. Otherwise, it will be useless. These are
Can
very
you send
simple.
today file today, sir? Like today recording.
Yeah, Ravi, what is happening is in Google Docs,
Muted.
trying to take more and more time. It is almost taking 1 hour time to upload that video. So that's the reason why I'm uploading every next day. Otherwise, I don't have any problem because it is almost at 10:30 and 10 o'clock, right? So that's the reason why I'm uploading every day in the morning.
Unmuted.
Okay, not an issue. Morning if it is possible to do it early.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so we start this session.
The organizer has ended the session, and this call will be disconnected.